problem is that he's like a new rich person, because like the old rich people, or like the sort of rich Tories that are sort of like asset rich but kind of cash poor, I think are very different from like people like him, who probably like is kind of a new rich guy for whom like the Tory party was sort of the avenue in which like perhaps back in 2010 or like in the 2010s is like the avenue that people like them sort of go to, the upwardly mobile kind of consultant class who sort of want to try and do kind of technocratic politics, because it's like a little bit different and it reminds them of like the secondment that they went on when they were doing their grad scheme or whatever. But now he sort of found himself at like the death knell of this party that whose only kind of thing that they've got left is nostalgia, right? And I think that's kind of this is not to sort of give this guy credit or anything, but it is just like, I feel like his job, and I one of the commentators actually sort of said this, where they were like, look, the Tory party is like fucked, but he should sort of know that like, you know, his job is to sort of be present at these kind of events that very traditional Tory voters kind of, you know, AKA like old, you know, pensioners and stuff like find very, very important. And so for him just to be like, fuck that, this isn't me, this isn't my life, you know, I'm rich, fuck this shit.
It's cool. It's cool.
Yeah. That's a real affront to, I think, like people who are sort of notionally Tories and for whom all they have left is like nostalgia bait, to kind of be with a prime minister that just does not give a shit about any of that. And like, I don't think it's completely wrong, but I think it's just like, you know, yeah, he's sort of in a place where he clearly just doesn't want to be in. And it's very funny that he's not, seemingly like by accident, he's kind of making that very apparent.
Yeah, I think my favorite part of the D-Day thing wasn't even that he didn't show up, but he had to like give some like emergency like interview like response thing, and his response wasn't to like apologize. But he's like, "Yeah, I already did a bunch of like type of shit like before that. I already spoke with all these people, so like just fucking get off my back." I guess it like if you're pissed off, I'm like sorry. He's like a male manipulator about it, but like
I'm sorry, you're mad.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I think the billionaire thing is like a really particular detail as well too, because like he could have had such an easier life. I think he knows this now. I think he's found this out. He could have had such an easier life had he just like been a donor, had he just like bought politicians, which in this country is insanely cheap to do. We've seen how little they sell themselves for.
£1,300 membership to the jockeys enclosure at Newmarket Racecourse.
Exactly. But like instead of that, because like he wanted to be a politician, because he wanted to be prime minister and was willing to like knife Boris to get there. Now he's trapped in this kind of like endless misery. And it's really funny as well, because like to do that for the trappings of power in the US, I get, right? Like you get fucking Air Force One and the Secret Service and, you know, a finger on the nuclear button, all the rest of it.
And dementia these days as well, which is pretty
guy bringing you infinite Diet Cokes. Like it's kind of cool to be president of the United States. I can see why someone would want to do it, right? But like to be prime minister, like you get what out of that exactly? It's
like an arguably top 50 most powerful job like in the world, behind like being CFO of like Amazon or something. And like,
yeah, exactly. You get to be like in a motorcade of like 3 Land Rovers, I guess. You get to write a letter to our like one of our 3 nuclear submarines saying like, oh, fucking nuke Russia if we all die or whatever. And then as punishment, I think this is the other thing that I don't think...
You get to go on loose women.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the other thing that he didn't kind of comprehend getting into this is once you are prime minister, you are stuck with it because of like a slight movement towards the presidential, which means that now every November for the rest of his life, he is going to have to like go to Remembrance Sunday, go to all the shit that he didn't want to go to now with the guy whose job he took and Liz Truss. And I think that is a sort of a karmic
and the punishment. Guy who like beat him by 400 seats.
Yeah, exactly. He's going to have to like be sharing a quiet word at the cenotaph with Keir Starmer, who has just like absolutely destroyed his legacy or whatever legacy that could have been.
Because that's the thing. He thinks he's above all of this. You're not. You're down here with the rest of them. They don't even wear Laurel Piana.
He so easily could have been, but he chose to forfeit that, you know, which is a bizarre, hubristic thing to do.
Yeah.
For what? To meet Emmanuel Macron at a D-Day summit. Yeah. To go get ignored at COP26. To be like the 5th most important person on the Security Council. What the fuck did you do it for?
Yeah, it's so cool that he did it after the whole Liz Truss thing. Because like trying to succeed Boris, like I kind of get he was kind of taken out by like a personal scandal, not like any like economic collapse or whatever. It was arguably kind of salvageable. Like it was like you're going to be an incumbent in a post-COVID, post-Ukraine world, which is not like desirable, but like you can kind of maybe make something out of that. But doing it after Truss when she just like fucked everything and they were down by like 30 points, it's like you got to be like a real Iron Man to want to do that. And what's really fascinating about it to me is that there is a world where he comes out of this actually kind of respected, because at least within the parties, like they love to give kind of like respect and like kind of credence and even admiration towards like people who just ate shit for on behalf of the team. Like that happened with like Sergeant Shriver when he like became a governor's running mate in like 1972. He was always very
Ian Duncan Smith is still kicking around.
Yeah, they're like always very kind of
writes great books.
Party grandee.
They're well respected as party men. Like Shriver was able to run for president 4 years later and got a moderate amount of traction. Like you can, if like the fault is clearly with someone else, like Boris or Truss, you can come out of this and still kind of have a career intact. You had a very safe seat.
Even if it was your fault, like David Cameron's foreign secretary now, like he did the comeback
Yeah,
tour.
exactly. So like being able to like become your own unique fuck up relative to Truss and Boris is just really remarkable. It's just statistically, you think they would have gotten somebody kind of good by now because they've gone through so many people.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the problem is that you have to recruit from like British people and Tories, which are both very sort of like limiting benches. I guess the other thing about this too, right? I'm trying to think about why Rishi Sunak entered politics, right? And as far as I can tell, it wasn't to actually like achieve anything. There wasn't like a specific like policy legacy that he wanted to like stamp his name on. Like it wasn't even like a kind of Milton Friedman thing like Truss, where it was like, I'm gonna like destroy the fucking like economic orthodoxy. As best I can tell, in the kind of dying minutes of his like leadership, when he gets the chance to kind of throw whatever he wants at the wall, his answer is like banning smoking, which is fine, I guess. But like, was this what it was for? Like, you could have lived in California untroubled by any like friction in the rest of your life.
Yeah, it's so weird to like go that hard. But he's basically kind of like a centrist. Like his whole like kind of persona is like, oh, I'm a Tory, but I'm not like a Liz Truss person. Like, then what are you doing this for? You don't have any like any vision. Like, what's the point?
I'm a Tory, but my bathrobe is clean. I respect toweling.
I'll tell you exactly what I think it is. I think that Rishi Sunak became so Americanized that he forgot that all of the trappings of British power are just a curtain, and behind which sits the normal guy who's the great and powerful Oz. I think he forgot that this is not a place that it is cool to be in charge of. And I think he only found that out upon getting handed the keys to what turned out to be quite the lemon of a car, basically.
Yeah, like genuinely, like having a bunch of conversations with like other hedge fund guys in New York where they're like, being prime minister, that sounds cool, I guess. And then you knife your boss to get that job, and your response is like a kind of shitty apartment, which he and his wife have decorated horribly, and in which presumably, since Liz Truss hasn't had time to unpack her stuff, he has left you at like an upper decker in the toilet.
Yeah, that's the thing. You have why I think that this is Rishi Sunak is actually one of the most interesting British prime ministers for a long time, is that it shows how free you are as a billionaire and how how much more like a normal person the prime minister is than a billionaire. And he's forced to go to work meetings he doesn't want to go to. He's forced to like live in a relatively small, relatively normal flat. He has to decorate himself. He can't have his mansions. He can't have his servants. He can't go to fucking Bohemian Grove. He can't just be hanging out with his billionaire friends, comparing the wine collections that they don't even touch because they don't drink. They just want to accumulate it. He's not doing any of the stuff that they like. He's just dry on adrenochrome at this point, because he has to live like a regular guy. And it is so funny to watch every single fucking day.
I take it back. There is a third bright spot to this election.
Yeah. It's funny that if the Prime Minister went on the Leader Express, the overwhelming response to the British public would be, who does he think he is?
Flying on a private plane.
Why didn't he take a train there?
Yeah, that's right. Why didn't he go on EasyJet?